It's time to pull those belts tight, race fans. The front stretch is coming at you, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Dirk Houston.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced white-knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs. So you think you can do it better than Derek Cope? You think maybe you could do it better than A.J. Allmendinger, Austin Dillon, Danica Patrick?
They're coming to Joe's?
Get over to Joe's Karting and just maybe figure out it's not as easy as it looks sitting from the armchair. I know as a guy who runs a fantasy league, and I'm going to do this in quotes, participates in the fantasy league, because I'm taking up the bottom third of the contest. And it's not that easy. Being the fantasy expert is not very easy at all. And good kudos to Chad Robb, Mr. Fantasy, for doing that. But also these drivers, I mean, it's a lot harder than it looks. And if you ever go and turn laps over at Joe's Karting, I almost guarantee you're going to get out of that cart and go, okay, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, and I'll give you a heads up for those armchair racers that Joe's Karting, they do not have cup holders. So.
Today's show, as always, brought to you by Joe's Karting. Always do look forward to Joe's Karting supporting us and supporting dirt racing in the area. I know they sponsor a couple of tracks around the area, so thank you to Joe's Karting. Do what you can in the off-season while the racing is kind of toning down for the local dirt tracks. Get over to Joe's and do a little bit of racing. It's getting a little bit chilly now, but they've got that indoor heated area, so you're going to stay nice and at least warmer than you would in an outdoor arena or an outdoor venue. And it typically stays about 50, 55 in there. So you still want to bring a jacket and maybe even some gloves. And the other great thing I love about it is that even though it's all closed up and the heater is going, they do still circulate the air often enough to where you don't get a real fumes smell when you walk into the joint.
They've also got, I haven't seen the exact date yet, but I know the celebrity race is coming up here.
The Racing with the Stars?
Racing with the Stars
for the
is coming
holiday
up.
horsepower drive, yeah.
Correct. They'll have that up, and we'll have some dates on that here real soon, I suppose. And they usually have a pretty good auction with some nice items up there for that.
Oh, yeah. And then also they do this new Tuesday league that you need to check out. joeskarting.com, karting with a K. Get over there today. Figure out what it's all about. And thank you again to Joe's Karting for sponsoring the front stretch. Race number 2 for the NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series playoffs is in the books. It's, 7 days old now. New Hampshire wrapped up last Sunday. And once again, Dirk, it really kind of looked like it was going to be a Martin Truex Jr. stink show. He was just going to dominate the field. Him and Cole Pearn have put together some of the fastest cars we've seen in a consecutive basis. I was listening to some NASCAR talk earlier this week, and you really do have to think back a long, long time ago to think of somebody that had this dominant of a run throughout the entire season. We've seen comers and goers. You know, you can really break the season up into thirds, and a lot of times you'll have a guy who's fast for a third of it and then able to maintain for the other 2/3. But Martin Truex Jr. has just been ungodly fast the last, we're now into 28 races complete. We'll go into 29 this weekend. Well,
they've done their homework and kept their notes. They're fast on the mile. They're fast on the mile and a half. Terribly fast on the mile and a half. Almost scary fast. Their super speedway, needs work, but that's such a crapshoot for everybody, not just them. Look at Kyle Larson, the fact that if it's a 2-mile track, just everybody else stay home. Kyle's going to win.
He's got it.
He's got that part figured out. And
there's the fact that NASCAR's let them get away with some stuff. There's that too.
And
by the way, you can't see it on the radio, but my tongue is firmly inserted into my cheek with that comment.
And I had a nice big eye roll on there. But,
I thought you were passing out. But
Kyle's starting to figure out some of the short track stuff, and he's the real threat.
And you're talking Larson or Busch?
Kyle Larson.
Okay.
I mean, Kyle Busch has won this track, that track, and every other track. So
I think there's only 1 or 2 tracks left on the circuit that Kyle Busch hasn't won at. But
I was listening to some Trading Paint the other day, and Chocolate Myers was talking about, right now the only person that can beat Kyle Busch is Kyle Busch, and it's a pretty thoughtful statement if you just sit down and think it. Because there's a lot of times when he just gets all bent out of shape when some little thing happens and, he goes downhill quick. Nothing happened to him the other day. He won the race. Would he have won if Martin hadn't been in that little fender bender? I still think so.
You think so?
Yeah. I think he'd have been able to hold off because I think Kyle Larson was fast enough. I think Truex would have had trouble getting by him to get at Kyle Busch. But
to your point, Kyle Busch finished third in stage 1, won stage 2, and won the race, walked away with the most points on the day. That's 58 points that he was able to pick up. Martin Truex Jr. Finished, first in stage 1, sixth in stage 2, and ended up finishing fifth on the day. And like you talked about, his car was just never quite right after that accident. Was that on the front stretch or the back stretch?
It was on the back stretch coming out of 2. Harvick said that Austin Dillon got into him, and they've got bad blood anyway between the two of them.
There's something to do with a silver spoon. I don't know.
Yeah, the angle that I saw, I couldn't tell if he hit him or not. Yeah. I mean,
it was tough to see from the NBC broadcast, from the TV broadcast. You just really couldn't. They only had kind of a glimpse of it coming out of 2, and it was kind of at a down the backstretch angle,
from the other, from going into turn 3.
Yeah.
So you're all the way down the backstretch, so you couldn't see if he touched him. And the car coming off the corner trying to accelerate at that point, the back end is so light. Mm-hmm. He might have touched him, and it wouldn't take much to put him around. And then, like Harvick said, I kind of screwed up trying to save it as long as I did.
Yeah.
And, but Truex got his damage backing up into Dale Earnhardt trying to get out of the melee.
That was weird. Like the two spotters couldn't get together and say, "Hey, you stop, and we're going to back up and move out." Or
it happened so quick. They're not listening. He's looking in his mirrors and he's trying to back up and trying to go. And it was just a bad deal.
But after that, his car just kind of flat as it got up into the top 5. He wasn't really able to get much past there. And really, when he got up into the top 10, his car really. He wasn't able to knock down the drivers like he was before.
Well, he had a big aero issue at that point.
Yeah.
That quarter panel there where the fuel is and trying to keep the fuel outlet in good shape and everything. And it was really weird the fact that they both hit that spot on their cars. Mm-hmm. They didn't, one didn't hit the front or hit the other rear. They both hit that driver's side rear. And, the aero, it's not as big as it would be on a 1.5-mile track, but still on a 1-mile track, they've got enough speed and stuff on there that they need their aero package correct.
As a result of that accident, like we talked about, it was the incident was started between the 4 spinning, he says, as a result of the 3 making contact with the 4, send Kevin Harvick around, and like you talked about, what is common practice with these cars, when they start to spin, they get into the throttle to keep the car moving around.
Keep it off the wall.
They can get it going straight again, and then they come out of the throttle, get their grip again. Otherwise, they're liable to hit into the outside retaining wall if they lift. So it's common practice. There was just so much smoke. Was that smoke maybe was the amount of smoke maybe because of that PJ1 or PHL or whatever they put down?
No, he was just he had the car matted.
Yeah.
He was matted, trying to keep it out of the outside wall because that's where you go when you spin coming out of a turn. And he was just, he was doing a burnout in the middle of the race, plain and simple.
And that was kind of that amount of smoke. I haven't seen that in a race before, at least not to my recollection.
It was in Days of Thunder.
It reminded me, that's what I was going to say. It reminded me a lot of the Days of Thunder scene. And that's what happened. Martin Truex Jr., they showed the on-camera, on-car camera view quite a few times, and he just went through that, or not, it wasn't Martin Truex Jr., it was Kurt Busch. And he went through it anticipating that the car was going to go low, and instead it stuck right in the middle of the track, and when he came out of the smoke, you could see his car start to wiggle as he was trying to get on the brakes, not able to do it, and he made contact right where Kevin Harvick's right side A post is, which is that post that goes up along the windshield, and it screwed up his Kevin Harvick's steering. Kevin ended up finishing 36th, getting a whole 2 points for the contestants that picked him. Kurt Busch was able to go on for the day. No, he didn't. He finished 37th, and he gained himself a whole point.
Yep, and he's the one that now is behind the 8 ball.
Right, and Casey Kane also, he's one of them that was a playoff contender that was involved. That it was a separate incident, and that was later on in the race. It was a 300-lap race, and Kane was only able to complete 289 of the laps. He came out with he came off the track with about 30 or 40 to go, didn't he?
Yeah, and they welded his trailing arm back up, and then he went back on the track and finished the race. But
35th is where he finished. He gained himself 2 points. Other playoff contenders that had bad days, Austin Dillon finished 19th, Jamie McMurray 16th, and really top 15 with 16 drivers in. I don't think this is necessarily a bad day. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 15th, Jimmy Johnson 14th, Ryan Newman 13th, Denny Hamlin 12th, and Chase Elliott 11th. Ryan Blaney, first playoff driver within the top 10. He finishes 9th. Your top 5 ends up being Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, Matt Kenseth, Kyle Larson runner-up, and Kyle Busch gets the win. So Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. have punched their ticket into the next round, and something I didn't really anticipate, but it was pointed out after the race, Kyle Larson and Brad Keselowski have both punched their tickets because with one race to go and 60 possible points, they're both above the possible cutoff line. So they point their way in automatically with going into Dover today.
Correct. And there were two interesting parts in the races if you paid attention. Joey Logano getting up into the top 10 after starting 39th. I think he was tail end Charlie on this deal. And he had an interesting little penalty from NASCAR. They put him in his car and pulled him on pit road and made him sit for the whole final practice.
We're gonna talk about that in turn 3 when we get to the NASCAR news and notes.
Definitely a different deal. And Jimmy Johnson, who ran consistently, I think he started 10th but worked his way up into the 5th or 6th spot and it looked like he was just stuck there and wasn't going anywhere. But the last 100 laps, man, he was dropping like a rock. He's lucky he stayed 14th, and that's only because, what was there, like 16 or 17 cars on the lead lap? He might have ended up a lap down if he'd, if they hadn't had a couple yellows in there.
Your playoff leaderboard going into Dover today, Denny Hamlin sits in 5th. He is the first car that isn't automatically into the next round. 44-point advantage over the cut line. Matt Kenseth in 6th. Jimmy Johnson in 7th. Ryan Blaney in 8th. Chase Elliott 9th, Kevin Harvick 10th. Kevin Harvick is probably the last guy. 25 points, he's probably pretty secure going into Dover.
Well, that's like an 11th place finish, depending on what you do in the stages. But he's won at Dover. Of course, Jimmy Johnson's won 11 times there. I think Kurt Busch has 3 wins there. Matt Kenseth has a couple wins there. So there's a lot of guys with wins. But Matt Kenseth, I think, and Kurt Busch are the two that are – they're going to dump everything into this, How
about Matt Kenseth? Didn't win a race. He made it in on points, and now he's sitting 6th, 2 races into the playoffs, has a 43-point advantage.
Well, the last half of the season, he kind of pulled a Ryan Newman from 2 years ago. I mean, Ryan Newman made it in and ended up second in the championship without winning a race.
Yeah, he's doing very well for himself 2 rounds in. Your cut line right now, like I said, 12th place is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He is tied with Austin Dillon. He has the tiebreaker, so he's the last car that would make the next round. Austin Dillon, then Ryan Newman, 1 point behind. Kurt Busch, 17 points behind. Casey Kane, 21 points behind. Logically, Kurt Busch, Casey Kane have got to win.
Pretty much, and I don't see that happening for Casey. I mean, let's face it, Casey's win at Indy was a fluke.
Yep, I agree. I mean, as much as you want him to do a lot better, I agree.
Kurt's had pretty good speed the last several races, and the fact that he's won there before, he knows how to get around the place. I think he's got a decent shot at winning, but you never know. I mean, the way the cars, the guy takes a car to a track sometime and it just isn't a good car,
They had that at Stewart Haas. I mean, with last weekend in New Hampshire, you'd have expected Kevin Harvick and Kurt Busch to do better, but both of them were farther back in the field, sitting in the mid-teens.
Exactly.
And they really weren't much of contenders. Had they had just a little bit better of car, they'd have never been in that situation.
Yeah, but part of that might have been the VHT.
Yeah.
Might have been the sticky stuff for them because their cars might have been fantastic without it. But, everybody had to play with it.
Yep.
So, and they could have tried to drive around it or, in between the two patches they did because I think they kind of laid the bottom groove and then the middle groove and left the rest of the track open. But everybody else was taking advantage of it and they had to stay in it to try and block to keep their position.
So again, Truex and Kyle Busch both locked in on wins. Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski locked in on points alone. Your real bubble to look at, 11th place, Jamie McMurray, only 9-point advantage. 12th place, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and 13th place, Austin Dillon tied. Ryan Newman, 14th, 1 point back, and Kurt Busch, 17 points back in 15th, with Casey Kane 16 points back in 21st. That's New Hampshire. We're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 2. We're going to recap the 2017 NASCAR Whelen Weekly Point Standings the points championship at I-80 Speedway. Then in turn number 3, we'll talk about a couple of the NASCAR news and notes, some of the news that have circled throughout the newspapers in the last week. And then in turn number 4, we'll get you caught up on what's going on. Going into Dover today, maybe some of the news and notes that are pertaining to Dover, tire tests, tire compounds, that kind of stuff. And we'll get you all set for today's race at Dover International Speedway. We'll be back here on the first.
Kansas Speedway's first playoff elimination race is coming. Here's some reasons to be there. Reason number 88. It's Dale Jr.'s last Kansas NASCAR Cup race. We can all lift a cold one to that. Reason number 78. Martin Truex Jr. Because underdog stories make the playoffs even better. Did I mention it's the playoffs? The Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Hollywood Casino 400, Sunday, October 22nd. Tickets at kansasspeedway.com.
This week's young gun on the front stretch is 16-year-old Jacob Hobscheit, known as the Little Hooterville Hustler. Jacob has grown up around racing, watching his dad and uncles. At the age of 5, Jacob started his racing career turning laps in a go-kart where he won a track championship in the Junior 2 class. In 2012, he decided to leave kart racing and try his hand at a sport mod where he's competed for 4 years, winning 5 races, including the opening night of the Silver Dollar Nationals in 2016. He also won postseason awards like Rookie of the Year at Junction Motor Speedway and Most Improved Driver of the Year at I-80 Speedway. This year, Jacob decided to move into the A-Mod class and compete weekly at I-80 Speedway and Adams County Speedway, where he currently sits 3rd in the season point standings at both tracks. Next time you're at a dirt track, keep your eye out for the 01 N&W Transfer Hobscheit Henry Pro Chrysler Truckers Accounting Service A-Mod, driven by the Little Hooterville Hustler, Jacob Hobscheit. This week's Young Gun has been brought to you by NASCAR Home Track I-80 Speedway. The tradition created back at Sunset Speedway continues October 13th and 14th with the Cornhusker Classic at I-80 Speedway. Come enjoy over 200 of the best dirt track drivers as I-80 Speedway closes out their 2017 race season. Modified, sport mods, stock cars, hobby stocks, Grand Nationals, and sport compacts battle for 2 big days at the famed I-80 Speedway. Get your tickets in advance at i80speedway.com. The Cornhusker Classic, October 13th and 14th. Be there.
We're hooked up in turn 2 and still showing the green flag on the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Heading into turn number 2, time to talk season recap at I-80 Speedway. I know all week we've been running promos saying that Stan Caesar was going to join us to recap the Eagle point standings, but Stan needed to reschedule, so we did a quick switcheroo, and we're going to recap the I-80 Speedway points battle. One driver defended their title. Every other class we had brand new champions, and so a great year out of I-80 Speedway. There was a ton of drivers, and this is one of the year that I really got to kind of sit back and just watch as I didn't have to learn so much, which is a tough deal for me, learning. And man, maybe I've said this to several people. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because, you know, it's easy for me to sit there and look at what happened just recently and say this was the best. But I really do think that this was one of the best years of weekly racing action at I-80 Speedway that I've seen in the three years that I've been there. Just fantastic battles on the track, lap after lap, side by side. It's just they're doing some amazing things out there, and just the track prep crew did a fantastic job setting the track up for a really racy track, and I think it's one of the main reasons why we were able to have such good racing. Well,
that and some of the guys been around in some of these classes for a few years. I know the sport mod with young Mr. Jenkins. I know he moved up to the A-Mod, so there was one that, you know, wasn't even trying to defend his title. So,
yep. And that's, to your point, I think there was 3 classes that the champion moved up to the next division.
They do a good job with the track, and they run so many specials, so many 2- and 3-day shows that they throw a couple midweek shows in there, like that. The Go 50 was like Tuesday night, if I believe,
and the Rock and Roll 40, which was a Thursday night.
Yeah, so they put plenty of water on the track, but they manicure it, you know, tearing it up and packing it back down, you know, and everything with the equipment on these 2- and 3-day shows. So if they weren't able to do that, the Silver Dollar Nationals would be a bust.
Yeah,
they could pay $100,000, but nobody'd come because if the track sucked. But,
and again, you know, we're going to cover the weekly point standings, but I'm so impressed with the track that Steve and the track prep crew are able to give these drivers. It's such a smooth track for the Silver Dollar Nationals. And you would expect it for the Silver Dollar Nationals, but they're also able to give that to the weekly guys, to where there really is. I mean, if there's only 2 grooves to that racetrack, which I can't remember much more than 1 or 2 races this year that there was only 2 grooves, there's typically 3 grooves, and sometimes there's 4, depending on your class. To give the drivers that much space to be able to find their way around each other really leads to some just amazing racing.
Well, yeah, and a lot of fans want to go and they want to see just the A mods, or they want to go see the late models. But I know I have always been and am still a fan of. Now it's morphed into the IMCA stock car class, from the pro-ams. Mm-hmm. But that has always been some of the best racing out there. You'll get 2 or 3 cars nose to tail, and they might run that way for 10 or 12 laps without anybody passing because nobody makes a mistake.
Right. And you got Scott Carlson, Nick Woodard, Eric Rempel, those guys that they're just fantastic, and it is really hard to find your way around another competitor. And we watched it so many times. I mean, I lost voices on Saturdays because of trying to call this 3-wide action. Somebody go to the middle groove, somebody go to the low side, just trying to make a pass. And amazingly, no wrecks. They're able to keep off of each other. They're able to keep their lines. They're able to keep the action going.
Well, they respect each other's equipment,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people think that the wrecks are what you go to the races for. Not me. I'd like to see the racing. But I know those people are out there, so they get disappointed when there's not any. But if they're racing side by side 3 wide for 4 or 5 laps, you can't be disappointed that they didn't wreck.
Absolutely. For your River City Heating and Cooling Sport Compacts, Dan Markham kind of walked away with it, but he had a little bit of a hiccup with about 3 or 4 points races to go in the season. Got parked in the after the heat races because of some rough driving. He disagreed with it. Some fans disagreed with it, but the track said, no, we're kind of unhappy with the way you've been driving lately. You've been warned a couple of times. You're going to sit down. So he got last place points that night, and it kind of put the points battle in contention again. Going into the night, I believe it was just a couple of points difference, maybe 6 points difference between him and Jeremy Bolin. But Dan Markham was able to walk away. 3 wins on the season in 11 features, 9 top 5s, 10 top 10s. And Jeremy Bolin came home second, Evan Harabik in third, Scott Brown in fourth, and Andrew Kuva rounds out your top 5. Defending track champion Denny Berghunt Jr. picked up 3 wins on the year, but only finished in the 15th spot after winning his title last year. He kind of didn't really. He decided not to run full time for I-80 at I-80 Speedway for the points, and he decided to move to some different tracks.
Yeah, and that's what you see a lot of these guys. When we were talking last week with Bob Harris, they were talking about some of their racers that normally bounce around but had a points lead, and so they stuck it out and then won the title, and that's what a lot of racers do. They'll, run 5 or 6 weeks, and if they're sitting pretty in points, top 3 or something like that, they'll change their original strategy of bouncing around and pick a track to try and run a title at, because it's always nice to have that big trophy in your living room.
Well, and I mean, it pays well too. I mean, it's the one thing I've always heard about the NASCAR point standings is that the end of the year points checks are a little bit thicker than the IMCA points checks. Not a racer, haven't gotten one for myself, so I can't tell you for sure. But I know that I've just heard several drivers say that it's worth running top 5 in points at a NASCAR weekly track.
Well, especially if you're in a feature division, I mean, and you can get into some type of national point money too,
Hey, speaking of which, congratulations to young gun Dustin Thompson. The guys down at Adams County talked about him winning the track championship there in his rookie season. He ended up getting the call, and he was the Division 5 NASCAR national champion. Came right out of Iowa, out of Corning, Iowa at Adams County Speedway. So congratulations to him, and he's one of our young guns that was able to pick that up in his first season. Be interesting to see what he's able to do year 2 and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, actually, for a rookie season, that's really going to be tough to back up. I mean, it's always tough to win the first championship.
Yeah.
And the only thing tougher is winning the second.
It's only downhill from here for that. I mean, he can maintain. He could always go and win it again or move up to a different class. But as far as the sport compacts, it's only downhill.
Yeah.
All right, for your River City for your certified transmission hobby stocks, first year they were in weekly competition at I-80 Speedway. They added them to the bill in 2017, and what a battle it ended up being. Like you talked about with the stock cars, the hobby stocks really kind of have the same kind of mentality where it's going to be a bit of a freight train going around the track on the high side, but it's fun to watch when these guys stick their nose down there and think maybe they can get a run and pick up a spot or two, and then to see the big shuffle. Denny Berghan Sr. ends up finishing top 5. Tom Myers in 4th. Brandon Weirgan in 3rd. Jason Cole, 3 wins on the year. 19 points out of the championship. Luke Ramsey ends up claiming the first ever certified transmission hobby stocks championship. I guess I shouldn't say first ever because I believe they raced there about 5-6 years ago.
They raced there before.
So Luke Ramsey ends up getting the championship at I-80 Speedway with 5 wins on the year, 8 top 5s, 9 top 10s. In 9 features, ends up getting 774 points. So he is your 2017 certified transmission hobby stock champion. For your ties, outdoor power, and service sport mods, this was one that kind of bounced around quite a few times. Mark Lighting, who was one of our contenders last year, along with Sean Harker, had 4 wins on the year, was well on his way to a great points battle with Sean Harker, and really kind of was my pick to win the championship. Got into what I'd heard, and I should say what I heard, a little bit of a disagreement with the track officials, and decided to go and run his car somewhere else. Ends up falling out of the points lead back into 11th. Sean Harker was able to defend his lead from there. Sean gets the 4 wins on the year, 5 top 10s, 10 top 10s in 11 features, only has 1 finish outside of the top 10 in the entire standings at the NASCAR Weekly Racing Action. And another young gun, Gunnar Pike, ends up finishing in that 2nd spot. Someone that I think is going to be a real contender in the next year or two for a points championship at Eagle Raceway and I-80 Speedway. Ari Scouten finishes 3rd, Red Oaks Josh Sink finishes 4th, and Matthew Andrews finishes top 5. But what a good class. I mean, you've got guys like Devin Peterson, Justin Bell, Mark Lighting, and Austin Swoboda and his brother Justin Swoboda. Both of those guys are going to be strong contenders, and all those drivers are going to be probably top 5, top 8 contenders in 2018.
Yeah, well, Swoboda name's been around the racetrack for a long time, the Pink Panther. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if that's their father, uncle. I'm really not sure where he fits into the deal, but Tom was a good late model racer for a lot of years and then dropped down and did some modified racing towards the end of his career. And I'm not even sure if his career is over. I don't know if he does some racing still out in the Columbus, David City area or not. Mm-hmm. But he used to get all over with the late model, and he was a threat wherever he showed up at. So they've got it in their blood.
Defending champion Ryan Jenkins moved up into the A-Mod class, which we'll talk about now, the Custom Diesel Driver Training A-Modifieds. Ryan ended up finishing 9th on the year for the point standings after moving up in his first year. And also his friend moving up with him, Jacob Habscheit, finished in the top 3. He was in that 3rd spot. Both of those guys, strong contenders in the Sport Mod class for the last couple of years, decided to move up. I think Ryan would have been a real contender if he'd have had a car the first 2 weekly points nights.
I was going to say, he missed a couple nights, I know, at the beginning of the year, and I think he ended up with just the 1 win on the year then.
Yep, 1 win for him. Jacob Habscheit still looking to get his first A-Mod win. I can't remember off the top of my head. I thought he got one down in Adams County, but
Correct.
that may have been last year.
No, I thought he got one this
Jacob
year.
Got
at
one
ASC,
this year.
I think so.
Travis Hatcher ends up walking away with the championship, 14-point win over Justin Gregg, who finished 2nd. Again, Jacob Habscheit in 3rd, who again was another one of our young guns. Jesse Dennis in 4th, first person in the top 5, the only person in the top 5 with a win. Matthew Andrews, Batman, trying his hand at an A-modified, finished in the 5th spot. Other wins went to Ryan Jenkins. The defending track champion, Jared Hoffelman, who decided to tour around this year, got 2 wins on the year, and Justin Zeitner, who also toured around a little bit this year, got 3 wins on the year in the Custom Diesel Driver Training Modifieds. For your Rotella's Italian Bakery stock car, Nick Woodard is one of the only people that was able to defend his title. 3 wins on the year, 8 top 5s, 10 top 10s. And finished 14 points in front of Eric Rempel. A good battle between those two for a long time for about 4 or 5 weeks, trading points leads. Eric Rempel finishes in the 2nd spot. Little Larry Robinson in 3rd, who, again, was another young gun of ours. Tim Drake and Scott Carlson in the top 5.
Yeah, they're just lucky that Mr. Nichols doesn't make this a weekly stop for him.
No kidding. I think we're trying to talk him into it, but I've heard rumors he may be going late model racing next year.
I would be surprised unless somebody's buying a car for him and putting that deal together for him, because I think he likes where he's at, and obviously he is the man in that class. He got his Boone Nationals win this year, and when we interviewed him earlier in the year, he hadn't had one yet, and like he said, he goes, if it never happens, it never happens. And of course, we brought him that front stretch luck, and he got his Boone Nationals win.
Hey, it's better be lucky than good, right?
There you
go.
go.
How many guys tell us that? For your Koziski Auto Parts, Grand National Brag and Right Light Models, this is such a stacked class, but Jacob Brown just absolutely blistered the field. 5 wins on the year in 10 features, 9 top 5s, and 10 top 10s. Only finished outside the top 5 one time. All of his other finishes in the top 10. He ends up winning over Dave Cook, Jacob Bridge in 3rd, Andrew Tilley in 4th, and Taco Todd Bell in 5th. Robbie Jorgensen, AJ Jorgensen, both of them future young guns. We're going to be getting those featured here in just a couple of weeks. Great class. And really, when you look at this class, there was about 25, 26 Grand Nationals that raced the entire year at I-80 Speedway, one of the smaller classes, but it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The Grand National class is not meant to be a forever class like some guys just like to race in the A-mods. They like to race in the stock cars. Grand National is set up as a stepping stone into a super late model, and I think it's doing its job because you're seeing a lot of super late models racing around the area right now.
Well, they do allow those cars. I'm pretty sure they've got a weight break and stuff, so they can compete with that car, like in the Malvern Bank series, the SLMR that Malvern Bank runs. So they can go try and run with those guys. I mean, anytime you're getting weight breaks and stuff, and I've been around the late model game for a long time, it's usually not a real good thing. You're not going to be super competitive, but an open motor is an open motor, and you can't beat cubic dollars and cubic horsepower. So
2016 champion Corey Dumpert is one of those guys that once again moved up into the super late model class, and Corey ended up finishing 12th with 1 win on the year, 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s, and in 6 features, so he ended up missing 4 features on the year. For your Cubby's Convenience Store super late models, Tad Pospischel, it wasn't an easy battle with Bill Layton and Ben Schaller hot on his tail the entire season. Tad, oddly enough, no wins on the year for the super late model series at I-80 Speedway. 9 top 5s and 10 top 10s in 10 starts, so only 1 finish outside the top 5. And I believe that was one of the weekends that he broke something in his steering and had to pull off. Bill Layton Jr., 1 win on the year, finishes 2nd. Ben Schaller, 3 wins on the year, ends up finishing 3rd. Matt Buller, no wins on the year, finishes 4th. And Corey Zeitner, 1 win on the year, finishes 5th. Look at this. Brian Koziski and Andrew Koziski finished respectively 6th and 7th. Both have a win on the year. Jason O'Brien in 8th with 2 wins on the year, and Corey Dumpert with another win. A very diverse class as far as the wins are spread out for the super late models.
Well, and a lot of them, if you look, you had a lot of guys miss a lot of races in that group you just read.
Only the top 6 made every race.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm kind of confused. I thought Andrew made every one of the races, but he must have DNS'd 1 race. So that is your point standings at I-80 Speedway. Again, what a great year. I was thoroughly impressed, and it was just a lot of fun to be able to be a part of that and to watch the whole thing unfold. So you can go to i-80speedway.com for more information on that. We're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 3. We're going to cover a couple of the news stories that have been circulating around the NASCAR world. I don't know if you noticed, but we got thrown into the politics this week. We'll talk about it coming up here on the Front Stretch.
Have you ever watched NASCAR, dirt track, or IndyCar and thought, I could do that? Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs is the place to put your money where your mouth is. Races fire off every 10 minutes, so what are you waiting for? Get to Joe's Karting on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs, next to the Mid-America Center, and find out how easy it is to drive a race car. Each Joe's Karting car is powered by an eco-friendly Honda engine capable of a 14-second lap. That's if you're as good as you think.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the Front Stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Need a reason to be at Kansas Speedway's first playoff elimination race? Here's some. Reason number 4, last year's winner, Kevin Harvick. You better believe he's ready to burn it down again this year. Reason number 18, Kyle Busch. Love him or hate him, love him and hate him, but don't ever underestimate him. The Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Hollywood Casino 400, Sunday, October 22nd. Tickets at kansasspeedway.com.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch, heading into turn number 3, brought to you by Kansas Speedway. Tickets for Kansas Speedway's first playoff elimination race of the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series playoffs are available now. Be a part of history at the Hollywood Casino 400 on Sunday, October 22nd for $99 or less and $29 for kids. Visit kansasspeedway.com or call 866-460-RACE.
And I don't know if it's a different promotion, but they've got $74 on their Facebook ads.
Yeah, again, let me read that very carefully for you. Starting at $99 or less. So if you think, well, it's going to be $100 for me to go to the race, you're sorely mistaken. You can get cheap seat tickets. I've found them in years past, even for the October race. Before it was an elimination race, I found them for $35, $40. You can get them for pretty cheap. They're $99 or less, and then obviously the ticket prices can go on up from there. We talked about it last weekend.
Well,
all
supply
the things
and demand.
You can add.
You know, the cheap tickets are gone. Then you're going to have to pay more.
And all the things you can add. So get them now. Get them now, and because these elimination races are beginning to sell out. That's the reason why they're a hot commodity for the tracks. They really want to be that elimination race.
Get your track pass, or is that what they call that? Where they can go down in that the fan zone?
Walk.
Fan walk. There you go. And, I mean, do the whole experience. You should be able to snag an autograph or two, go hang out by the driver's meeting and see exactly what that's all about. So when they talk about it, you know it. I was there. I saw that. That's exactly what they do. Mm-hmm. Go check the midway out. They'll have all kinds of stuff out there, all kinds of giveaways. I mean, it can very easily be an eye-opener for you if you've never gone.
Yeah. All right, so a couple of news stories that have circulated around. I don't know if anybody's noticed. There's this little bit of controversy going on in the NFL regarding players kneeling during the national anthem. It's bled into other sports. Basketball athletes and baseball players have all done it too, as a sign of protest towards. And I want to be very clear to this, because this is something that it aggravates the heck out of me. That it is not in protest of anything to do with the United States, the military, anything like that. It is in protest, as the guy who started it, Colin Kaepernick, said, it is to bring awareness to police brutality to the African-American race.
Which is against the United States, because
but it's
that's
not.
where it's
But it's not. It's not against police. That's the key thing. It's against police brutality against African Americans. He's just trying to raise awareness. And I only bring this up because I think it's really easy for us to get sidetracked on what the real story is. These guys are simply protesting that they are making a statement that they feel that the African Americans are targeted and treated unfairly by certain police officers.
But you do have a certain group now, led by Michael Bennett of the Seattle Seahawks after his little run-in with the police in Las Vegas, that they're demanding that the NFL take a stance on the month of November, when the NFL has
Veterans Day.
Well, has normally done the cancer awareness for the whole month of November. They wear the pink shoes and socks and all that stuff.
October.
I'm pretty sure they said no.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Well, I thought the NFL did the whole month of November as Cancer Awareness Month. I could be wrong, but that's what the article said, because they said these guys are demanding now that the NFL get on this. I can't remember exactly how they put it, but it was literally an anti-police platform for that month. And, like the guy that wrote the article said, do you think 4 players in the NFL can make the NFL do anything?
Well, and I mean, entire fan base hasn't made the NFL do anything. The NFL is not going to stop these guys, at least as far as it's going right now. They're not going to stop these guys from kneeling, even though there is some language that in a lot of their contracts with the teams and in the player conduct with the playing of the national anthem, The NFL hasn't come out and said all players must stand or anything like that. They're allowing these guys to have their peaceful protest.
Yeah, except you've got guys like Jerry Jones who had them do it before the anthem, and he did it in solidarity with them, but he would not let them protest during the anthem.
And that's fine. The thing with me, I've got no problem with this form of protest because I think the extreme argument that says that anybody that kneels during the national anthem is dishonoring those that have fallen in foreign affairs and fallen in foreign wars and defending our freedoms.
Well, and that's how some people look at it.
I think that is an exaggeration, and I think that is just taking the extreme of an argument and quite frankly playing on a lot of people's patriotism, and I completely disagree with that argument. Listen, those guys died. The guys that stormed Normandy Beach, the guys who fought at Appomattox, they fought for the right for freedom of all. And a part of those rights is to be able to say what you want to. It doesn't matter when a protest happens.
Well, yes, it does matter when a protest happens.
Okay. I went back and did a lot of looking at this. The only place that says that you must stand during the national anthem is not in the Constitution. It's not in the Bill of Rights. It is in the U.S. Code of Conduct during the national anthem.
My biggest gripe, though, is they're doing it at work.
But their work is the biggest stage.
Well, I'm just saying.
There's a little kid that just knelt during the singing of the Pledge of Allegiance in Omaha, and now he's in trouble. He's a first grader that just did it. So it doesn't matter where you did it. But
to me, like I said, my gripe's that they're protesting at work. There was a big Hispanic Day back in March, and I don't know how many hundreds of Hispanic workers walked out on their jobs for the one day, and I don't know how many ended up getting fired because there's a consequence. They protested when they should have been working. You do it on your own time, that's one thing. You do it on a company dime, then you got consequences, and that's my biggest gripe.
Okay, then that's something you could take up with the teams, and there's a tough line there. I mean, there could be case for lawsuits because they can easily make an argument that says I'm simply voicing my. That's fine.
When you're getting paid, the man is your boss. The Constitution really doesn't exist. You can't walk into work. You can't go out there.
It does exist because the Constitution. I understand your argument, and I do not disagree with it. But the Constitution will override something you've got with your company if the Constitution feels like your Bill of Rights is being infringed upon.
Put it this way. I think if you walk out in the lobby of a building, just like they can put you in jail because you yell fire. You start shouting racial epitaphs that are your freedom of speech.
But that is against the law. That there is a law that says you cannot create a scene of chaos.
Yes, correct.
So that's a little bit different.
But let's go out and let's just say you walk into your place of business and you start shouting racial epitaphs. It's free speech, so you can do that, but you're not going to keep your job.
Yeah. And you could probably fight for that too. Whether you'd win or not, you could fight for that under the Bill of Rights. Now, they may not, because we've seen this 100 times. When somebody makes an ass of themselves in the media and puts a bad look on the company, they will fire them. And absolutely, but I want to go back to my point here of the code of conduct regarding the national anthem. It says that all people must rise to attention, and where I have issue with the way it's addressed, and where I could start poking holes in it too, is that it doesn't say able body or anything. Just says all people must rise. So if you have an issue with the players not rising during the national anthem, then have an issue with the same person that can't rise, according to the way this is written.
No, can't rise and won't rise to me are going to be two different things. If I see a guy sitting there in a wheelchair,
but it doesn't say it there.
I understand that.
It doesn't say it there. So I have no problem with them protesting because let's be honest with you, it started to work, but then it got warped into disrespecting those that have died. And unfortunately, we've taken 10 minutes of this part of the show, which we're supposed to be talking about NASCAR and what's going on in the NASCAR world, and we're talking about politics.
Yeah, but it did become a big NASCAR issue in this past week.
Because our president spoke up and brought it there. This is what made me so mad on Sunday. Everybody knows, and any of my friends know, I'm not a Trump supporter. I don't like the guy, and I don't think he's a good president. But it really just, I felt completely violated when he felt like he needed to drag NASCAR into this, because now my little bubble away from the crap that is politics and what is ruining this world has now been ruined. We've been violated now. Our little bubble that I sit there on Sundays and I don't have to listen to to political issues and political, and I don't have to listen to all this crap. The only thing I have to put up with is Who Wrecked My Driver and medical commercials. That's all I have to put up with when I watch the race. And because he decided to go after the NFL and do this, it's made it into a big guys. If you would just understand something for me, if you really, really don't like this, shut up. If you just stop talking about it, it's like the bully. If you ignore them, they'll go away. I mean, you may get punched in the eye, you may get kicked down, but their biggest thing out of all of this is it continually being brought up. And the president just gave it the biggest podium that it could possibly, that we'll ever have. And all of a sudden, it's going to be a conversation for another 6 months or 2 years or however long. If everybody would just leave it alone and just stop talking about it and ignore it, these guys would find a different way to protest. Because if the protest that you're conducting isn't working, you'll do something else. And I guess that's my entire point on the whole thing.
Well, I've been reading some stuff today, and evidently the people that obviously have quit watching NFL games, and you still look, the stadiums are full, but if you pay $200 for a ticket, you're going to go to the darn game. That's all there is to it. But I did hear that DirecTV is doing refunds for their NFL ticket because so many people called to cancel their thing.
Well, I don't know if I buy this. I'm going to wait and see what the ratings are for the next couple of weeks. I think this is all just a bunch of posturing. Oh, I'm getting rid of my tickets. I'm not going to. I think in a couple of weeks, it's all going to calm down a little bit, and people are going to start going to the games.
People are going to the games. There's no empty seats.
And it doesn't, next year, 5 years from now, I personally, I've been saying this for a long time on this show. I think the NFL is in trouble for a completely different reason. Football is way too violent of a sport, and it's going to be a trickle-down effect that's going to start to take effect in the next 10 to 15 years. There's a lot of people out there that are keeping their kids out of Little League football and high school football because they don't want a drooling, bumbling idiot that has CTE. For a kid, they want, at 30 years old, to have a brain that's all completely screwed up because of this disease. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
But what about the other guys? Like they were talking about this the other day when they came out with the CTE thing for Aaron Hernandez. You know, that's what made him kill people. No, it wasn't. The dude was a thug. That's what made him kill people.
But you don't know. But you do know that he had CTE, and you do know that he had the worst recorded case they've ever found.
Yeah, but did he have the CTE when he was 17 and 18 and started getting in trouble?
Maybe, because he played football all his life. He certainly didn't start playing football at 19.
So did Herm Edwards, and he played like 15 years pro ball as a defensive back, so you know he was banging heads with everybody, and he's sharp as a tack, and he's in his 60s.
I don't know about sharp as a tack, but I mean, but the thing is, there's plenty of cases that they haven't been able to find CTE in any other sport other than football. I mean, I think they found it a little bit in hockey, but I think it's something that parents are looking at and saying, you know what, go play baseball, go play basketball instead of playing football. And that's what kids are doing. But again, we're getting sidetracked. We're talking about issues other than NASCAR. But to your original point, I don't think it's going to affect the ratings to the point where it's going to make a big deal. Yeah, there may be a dip here and there. There may be a dip here and there in certain stadiums, but I noticed it 4 years ago when I went to a Kansas City Chiefs game and they played the Cleveland Browns, who, by the way, were complete garbage at the time.
Still are.
It was half a stadium. I mean, it's not a good game. It was half a stadium. But instead of people looking at the real numbers and saying, well, that's been a troubling fact for a long time, they're going to say, oh, well, it's the anthem thing. They're now going to start taking a look at the seats, and they're going to start pointing that out. When there's been games that it's just tough to sell. I mean, the NFL's had a tough time selling the Super Bowl for the last couple of years simply because it's too high price of a ticket.
Well, and that'll probably be the telltale if this thing stays on and people keep this alive and keep beating it to death for the next couple months. When Super Bowl time comes around, let's see what the ads look like for the Super Bowl because of what these corporations pay. I mean, I read an article today, and I didn't get a chance to fact check it. I just skimmed it over real quick. The guy, I don't even remember his name, but he's owns the oldest clothing company or tailor outfit in the United States, and also is stretched out to, and he owns a couple of the rights with the franchises for check cashing joints. And he provides all the jackets. I think it was for the NBC commentators, that are on TV. And but he withdrew that, and he's got a bunch of ads that he withdrew. Now, I didn't get to fact check it, but I did read that whether that's anything. I also read Hugh Hefner died. So, yeah.
Do you want to take a moment of silence for that one?
We need like an hour of silence. But I did hear that,
what did I see? He's the only man that's died and isn't moving on to a better place.
Well, the one article I read, it said it's as stiff as he's been in 20 years.
Oh, that may have to get edited out. On a side note, it's something I saw somebody bring up quite a while ago. It's unfortunate that in a league, talking about the NFL, that is full of convicted rapists and murderers, that kneeling during the national anthem is what is causing the most issues. It's causing what you talked about, people to back out of sponsorships, people to just... It's rather unfortunate that we're saying that it's okay. We'll watch you on Sunday if you rape somebody or you kill somebody, but God forbid you kneel during the national anthem and try to protest police brutality towards an African American. God forbid you do that. But go ahead and rape as many people as you want to.
Well, and to me, if they're guilty of rape, they need to be in prison.
I agree. I completely agree.
But so obviously they haven't been found guilty of it. But obviously something happened, or it wouldn't have been all over the news.
You're right.
Everything
You're
else.
right. You're right. But there is convicted killers. I mean, who was the guy at the New York Giant that spent 2 years in prison after shooting himself? Taking a gun to it. Yeah, and then But you're right. They weren't convicted. You're absolutely right. I should back up that because they weren't, or they'd be spending time in jail. But yeah, it's unfortunate all the bad publicity that's happened in the NFL over the last 10 years, and this is what's gonna. What could possibly bring some real big issues down. All right, talking about some actual news and notes and getting away from this crap. I hate politics so much. Let's talk about Joey Logano being, what do you want to put into a corner for timeout? He had to stand in the corner.
Like a 1 hour timeout or whatever it was.
So NASCAR, and by the way, reading into this, I kind of like why NASCAR did this. So the penalty was because Joey Logano failed. He failed to make it through inspection, right?
Yeah, I believe it was qualifying inspection 4 or 5 times.
I saw 4 times.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous amount of times. And, NASCAR has been adding penalties, and it's happened to him several times. That's why he's had 15 minutes here or half an hour there. And they just finally said, you're missing the whole practice.
Well, it's like what you've said. These guys aren't paying attention. It's not hurting them enough. I mean, if you've got a fast car, all you're doing is saving gas and tires by sitting out on practice. So what's it matter? And this was the first time that NASCAR has it in their rule books, completely in their rule books. They have the right to elevate the penalty if they feel like it's not being effective enough. And so they elevated the penalty to where Joey Logano was required to sit in his car on pit road for the entire 50-minute practice session at New Hampshire for his number 22 Ford, failing pre-qualifying inspection 4 times the day before. And what everyone was kind of talking about was, well, why did you make him sit on the track or on pit road in his car strapped in and buckled in? And they basically said, because we want him to basically be in timeout. He's going to miss out on an hour of doing anything.
Well, that's just it. I mean, if you got told you can't practice for an hour, so don't even bother to go out there. They start tearing the car apart and getting it ready, for the actual race, changing the valve springs. I mean, they put a wrench on every nut on that car. So that's what they basically penalize him, is they didn't give him a head start on that.
This is what I'm going to compare it to, and I always try to draw comparisons in my life to make it easier for me to understand. When I was in high school, this is going to be hard to believe, but I got in trouble, okay? And I got 3 days of out-of-school suspension. And as a part of this, I was able to go around to each one of my teachers, get the homework assignments, turn them in early, and get full credit for them. As I'm sitting home serving my 3-day suspension, I thought, boy, have I really learned my lesson.
Let's see if we can do this next week.
No kidding. That's kind of, I kind of joked with that if I get in trouble, I'm going to be able to do everything I was going to be able to do faster than when I was here for the 3 days of schooling. So you really haven't taught me anything. And NASCAR kind of looked at it and said, that's absolutely right. If we allow him to just go ahead and pull off back to his hauler, he's going to get a jump start on everybody else. So put him on pit road and make him sit there. And Steve O'Donnell came out earlier this week and said, we're going to take a look at that rule, and we may be seeing some different things in 2018. Dirk, it's like you've been saying for a long time. These guys just aren't paying attention to this. Losing 15 minutes, losing 30 minutes of your practice time. We got to start hitting them hard. And some of the things you've mentioned is take away a set of tires, put them in the back, or they have to move to the back after the first caution or something.
Yeah, I mean,
something more severe to where it really does penalize them.
There's a million things they could do, a million. I mean, so many different variations of what they're trying to do. And I mean, they're trying to, they're starting at the light stuff, hoping that they'll pick it up and say, oh, well, we can't do that. Let's just figure it out and move on. But this missing practice, if they go to this, this new engine rule they're talking about where they have to use engines twice and stuff like that, you're going to see practice cut down to nothing.
Yeah.
Because they got to run the engine twice, so there won't be much practice. And so it's going to be no penalty at all at that point. It's crazy. The guys, they want to learn, and what you saw this year, this is like, Joey Logano's like the poster boy for NASCAR penalties this year. His one race that he got encumbered cost him the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then the second race in the playoffs, he's getting a penalty like he was in first place in points, but it doesn't matter where you're at in points,
Right.
So were they picking on him a little bit? I don't think so.
Yeah,
but it sure looks that way. And you have talked with me with several officials when we've had dinner with some of my buddies, and they tell you some of the stuff NASCAR does. So
well, and as much as you would like to say it's all fair for everybody, I mean the quite honest opinion. I mean you make NASCAR mad, they'll make your life hell.
Oh,
and that's one of their better one. I mean they'll and this is where I get such a kick out of Martin Truex Jr. being so fast. If NASCAR had any inkling that he was cheating. And by the way, if Martin Truex Jr. and Cole Pearn and that 78 team were cheating, there's 38, 39 other teams out there that would gladly point the finger at Martin Truex Jr. and say, hey, we're seeing they're doing this wrong. And NASCAR would immediately pop that car behind and they would start testing it to find out what they did. That's the great thing about NASCAR. I mean, they've got some gray areas in their own rule book for them to where they're able to really kind of be more of a dictatorship as opposed to a democracy when it comes to these rules and say, if we think you're cheating on something, we're going to take your car and we're going to find out. And if you are, we're going to hit you hard. But if not, you're going to get your car back and keep winning. And that's why I think Martin Truex Jr. and Cole Pearn have found something fast that is perfectly legal, because every time they win a race, their car gets torn down at the R&D center and they get the bigger spotlight than anybody else.
But Dale Jr. pointed the finger at him the other day. When he was talking about the fact that, after Chicagoland, Martin Truex went out and blew the tires off the back and tore the body up.
We've never seen that before, have we?
Well, but that's Junior's point. He goes, NASCAR's worried about a guy having a loose lug nut or a little piece of tape on the spoiler, and here's a guy that just tore the back half of his car all the heck, and nobody cares.
Really? Did he really say that?
Yeah.
They're worried about loose lug nuts?
Yep.
Wasn't it the drivers about this time last year before we went to Talladega, and everybody was saying NASCAR's letting us only put 4 or 3 on, and somebody's going to get killed?
That was 2 years ago, because then Tony Stewart spoke up about it.
And got fined for.
And then they changed the rule.
Right, because they were going to change the rule anyways. They already came out and said, we're going to look at this rule. So now when the rule is 5 on, 5 off, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is calling out NASCAR for trying to be safe.
No, what he's getting back is, when they do these post-race inspections and they find this guy $25,000 because he had 2 lug nuts off,
right.
Or if you happen to have 3 that aren't tight, they can be on the car, but if they aren't tight, then the crew chief's going to get a suspension for a race, etc. And he said, here we got a guy winning all these races that's clearly, he won by 8 seconds, And I told you that before. When a guy wins by that much, that car's coming apart, and it's coming way apart.
Yeah, and they found nothing. He was perfectly legal.
But
even after he blew a tire and ripped up his fenders, everything was perfectly legal.
But that might have been the not legal part, what he tore up. That's Dale Jr.'s point. And he's got a very valid point, because the aerodynamics there is huge.
Yeah, but his teammate is the one that figured that out first. Well, as far as I'm concerned, with Chad Knaus leaning in Jimmy Johnson's window and saying, "Hey, if you win this race tonight, make sure during your cookies you back it into the wall."
Yeah.
I mean, Hendrick is the one that coined it. They're the ones that, to my opinion, were the first ones that were exposed to doing it.
But that might have been something totally different than what's happening now.
Well, yeah, it probably was. But but as far as I'm concerned, they're the ones that first started doing the wreck your car on the post race. And by the way, I think NASCAR has a rule in there that if you wreck your car, you could be penalized.
Correct.
On the cool down laps or in the victory celebration. And I saw Dale's comments, and sometimes I don't know what the hell Dale's thinking.
Well, and that's
he makes a comment, and you're like, dude,
Did you see his article today?
Yeah, backtracking the comment about I would never kneel during the national anthem, but if the guy next to me does it, it's his right to protest.
Yeah, well, I just thought the way he went into the article, the way he said, well, at what age do you quit looking both ways when you back out of the driveway? Hopefully you never quit looking both ways. But yeah, I just thought, well, that's an interesting perspective. I've been driving NASCAR a long time. I'm in my mid-40s. I'm not going to look either way. I'm just backing out.
Maybe that's why
that's why he hit Truex.
They hit Truex. So it's I don't know, that whole the whole penalties thing right now. Quite honestly, it's really sad. And I know NASCAR has got to be upset with the amount of penalties and the amount of penalty talk. How many times have we let off the show, not with how great the race was, how side-by-side the racing action was, how great the passing was, how great the competition was. Instead, we're talking about somebody being hit with an L1 penalty. And it's really unfortunate because it's I think it's the equivalent of the steroid era for baseball. I think it's turning people off that there are so many cars out there that are in that gray area, and NASCAR has to find them. NASCAR has to do this stuff, and the teams aren't getting it. To bring it back around, the teams are just not. They're not being penalized enough. This is like a petulant child. It's like when you're first learning to discipline your child. They're going to keep pushing that envelope until the penalty outweighs the gain.
Right.
And until that happens, we're going to keep seeing this. So NASCAR is going to definitely have to stand up and start making some serious penalties, and that's going to make some fans mad because their driver is going to get really hit. But it'll level itself out eventually.
Well, you get a lot of fans that like to go to the first day because they just get to watch practice for free and stuff like that, you know, and if you traveled and don't have to buy a ticket to do that, you're going to be up there if you like the racing, you know, because there's as much racing going on in practice as what there is during the race if you pay attention.
Hey, here's some good news. There is a team coming to the Monster Energy Cup Series.
That is fantastic news. I read that article and I was like, "Oh, these guys are nuts," but okay. I'm glad they're coming. You know, and they dipped their toes in the water and liked it and jumped in. I was surprised that the driver that they brought on board with Derek Cope, but then when they listed him also as team manager, they're filling two hats with one man right now. Right. And as we both concluded after reading the article, it looks like that's just a temporary setup. Mm-hmm.
Something to get kind of a little bit of experience in 2017 before they get really full-time and go in full swing in 18.
And just to let everybody know, we are working to get a hold of somebody from this outfit and get some, a little bit of radio time with them and, see exactly what they're going to do and what their goals are. Obviously, their goal is to win a championship, but, just to see exactly what their plan is.
We're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 4, and we will wrap this baby up here on the front stretch.
Numbers. In NASCAR, numbers represent speed, passion, guts, and glory. Because numbers represent drivers. Numbers like 14, 88, 42, and 78. Numbers that say, that's my driver. Don't mess with my driver. See your number live at Kansas Speedway's first ever playoff elimination race, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Hollywood Casino 400, Sunday, October 22nd. Tickets at kansasspeedway.com.
Fall has arrived, and so have the cold temperatures, but that doesn't mean you have to stay home. Get into Joe's Karting today and enjoy the Metro's largest fully heated indoor karting track. Get your friends together for a white-knuckle experience you can only find at Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Hours of operation, discounts, and lap times can be found online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Get to Joe's Karting today and discover Council Bluffs' best-kept secret, 23rd Avenue next to Mid-America Center.
The tradition created back at Sunset Speedway continues October 13th and 14th with the Cornhusker Classic at I-80 Speedway. Come enjoy over 200 of the best dirt track drivers as I-80 Speedway closes out their 2017 race season. Modified, sport mods, stock cars, hobby stocks, Grand Nationals, and sport compacts battle for 2 big days at the famed I-80 Speedway. Get your tickets in advance at I-80Speedway.com. The Cornhusker Classic, October 13th and 14th. Be there.
It's checkers or wreckers as we enter turn 4 on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs.
Just about ready to wrap this baby up. Rolling into turn number 4, brought to you by Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch. By the way, we're about to announce the 5-week contest for Quaker Steak and Lube, which I guess we kind of are. I just have to get everything organized on the website for it. But you could win. It's a winner-take-all 5-week contest. Starts at Talladega in a couple of weeks.
We had to overlap the one race this time.
Yep, goes for 5 races, obviously, and then it wraps up at Phoenix. Winner-take-all, $100 gift card to Quaker Steak and Lube. You can bring that gift card down to the Homestead viewing party.
Or better yet, just come and pick it up at the Homestead viewing party.
Yep, and you can enjoy wings and beers courtesy of the front stretch of Quaker Steak and Lube in a 5-week contest. Free to enter, free as always, and we got to say a big thank you to Rick Havenridge of Wealth Partners. Also, Quaker Steak and Lube announced their next Touch a Truck event coming up in a couple of Mondays. It's going to be the Halloween-themed Touch a Truck, so there'll probably be plenty of candy for you to be able to enjoy. It's going on Monday. I believe it's going to be the 3rd Monday in October, so you'll have to head over to the Quaker Steak and Lube Facebook page to get that exact information. But we say thanks to Quaker Steak and Lube for being the official watering hole of the front stretch. All right. Also want to make it talk about Team Joshua Lewis. There's a fundraiser set up for him on October 21st. Joshua and his family are big race fans, and they reached out to us about getting some exposure onto their event. It's going on at noon on October 21st. Joshua has been diagnosed with a rare disease that his organs have been degraded, and his kidneys are failing. I believe he's...
Well, that's no fun. I can attest to that one.
Yep, he's on dialysis, and he's going to get to the point where his body won't be able to recover, so they're trying to raise money to be able to bring awareness to it so that he can get a new kidney, and he is blood type B positive, which is one of the longest waiting lists for kidneys. So if you have B positive blood, please go over to that information. Go over to Team Joshua Lewis. We'll share the page on the front stretch page here coming up in just a little bit, so you can get information on that.
Facebook page, that is.
Yep, we'll send it over there, and that way you guys can get more information on that and find out if you could be a donor, and you could save a little boy's life. Again, that fundraiser is going on October 21st, and we'll send over information for that. All right, as far as Dover is concerned, the race today on NBC and MRN, coverage starts at 12:30, green flag set to wave. I think actually coverage is going to start about noon. Green flag set to wave a little bit after 1. That is when picks are due, no later than 1 p.m. As Dirk, your girlfriend found out last weekend, if you happen to get your pick in a little bit late, as long as it's before the green flag, you can email me and I'll put it in. We've had this go back and forth where sometimes the website's just not working for us. Something's crossed up and Skynet's taken over or whatever. And just email it over to frontstretchradio@gmail.com. As long as it's in before the green flag, I'll accept it.
It's got that timestamp.
I'll accept it. This time last year at the Dover race, Jamie McMurray finished tail end Charlie along with Kevin Harvick and Ryan Blaney. They were all backpackers. Jamie McMurray finished 40th, Ryan Blaney 38th, Kevin Harvick 37th. Trying to skim through here and see other current playoff contenders that finished in the back. Kyle Larson finished 25th. Ryan Newman 17th, and then most of your playoff contenders that are for this year finished in the top 15. Martin Truex Jr. ended up getting the win. By the way,
he got his first win back in about 2004 or 5, something like that.
Only 6 cars finished on the lead lap at Dover. Martin Truex Jr. leading 187 of the 400 laps. He gets the win. Kyle Busch second, Chase Elliott third. By the way, Chase Elliott saw a stat. 3 starts at Dover, 3 top 5 finishes. Brad Keselowski finished 4th, Matt Kenseth 5th. Joey Logano, Jimmy Johnson, Austin Dillon, Denny Hamlin, and Jeff Gordon. Obviously not going to be Jeff Gordon this year because he was filling in the 88. He finished in your top 10. So that's how that finished out. That was, again, Dover this time last year.
And I don't think they're using any of the sticky stuff, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they did earlier this year, and I don't think they are this race. I have not seen it.
I concur with that. I have not heard any news stories that they plan on spraying it down, although they do have a new tire compound they're going to be using, which we talked about.
Really odd. They bringing a new tire out that they have not run at Dover before. They did not say if they'd run it anywhere else. But it had to be something they had in the works for a while because they can't just come up with all these, 12 or 14 sets of race tires per team, in a week. It takes a while to put them all together. So, Goodyear's obviously known about it for a while, and whether they'd said anything to NASCAR or not is a whole other story, but they didn't run a tire test that I'm aware of.
This time, for the June race earlier this year, the Annual AAA 400 Drive for Autism. Jimmy Johnson ended up getting the win, leading 7 laps. Your big leader of the day was Kyle Larson, 241 laps of the 400. This ended up going into overtime, 406 laps. Martin Truex Jr. finished 3rd, Ryan Newman 4th, Chase Elliott, your top 5 finish. Daniel Suarez, Jamie McMurray, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, and Danica Patrick with the top 10. Rough days for playoff contenders. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 39th. Brad Keselowski, 38th. Kurt Busch, 37th. That's not spelling well for a guy who needs a good finish at Dover, that being Kurt Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Jimmy Johnson won it from the back, too.
Yeah, he had to start. Let's see. He was credited with starting 14th, but you're right. He got moved to the back for illegal change. Something.
I was thinking it was a transmission change, but I could be wrong. Okay. But I was thinking it was powertrain.
Continue with some of the playoff contenders currently that finished back in the field earlier this year in the June race. Ryan Blaney finished 32nd. Casey Kane 17th, Kyle Busch 16th, and everybody else finished up into the top 15. So that's the way that looks for the race earlier this year at Dover. What are we missing to cover? The point standings, right? For the contests.
Yeah, the contest. We haven't talked a whole lot about our fantasy league yet. They stretched it out just a little bit in the 5-week contest. 5-week contest last week. You had between 1st and 20th was a whole 3 points. I believe 1st and 20th now is stretched out about 18 points, I believe. You got 3 people tied for 1st, which means they've taken the exact same drivers 2 weeks in a row. Then you had 4 people tied for 4th, 3 points back. And over half the people so far between the 2 weeks have used their Kyle Busch pick, and almost half have used their Martin Truex and Kyle Larson picks.
Yeah, so, top 20 separated by just 18 points. That's not enough to feel comfortable yet. But like you kind of mentioned there, you nailed it. Top 3 all tied. The next 4 are tied for 4th, and then 8th and 9th. Then you've got a couple tied for 10th. There's like a 6 or a 7-way tie for 12th. So it's still a big hornet's nest there for the 5-week contest at Kansas Speedway, and for the Pick'ems contest. Moving into the top 16, or taking a look at the top 16, Husker 18 still with the points lead. Our series points leader that led most of the contest until the reset, which I believe his name is Terry Havenridge, moving outside of the top 10 to come into the top 10. He is now up into 7th place, so he picks up several spots from last week's standings, and he's starting to make his way back up into the front. I think he's going to be a major contender in the next couple of weeks for that championship.
Have we got the same leader as we had last week?
I believe Husker 18 is still our leader, yeah. I believe she was our leader last year.
Well, I mean last week, because I know our leader...
Or last week, I'm sorry, yeah.
Well, our leader last week, I went to the football game with him, is a guy out of Kansas City, and just happens to be a personal friend of mine, Jeff Bloom.
Jeff. Yeah, not her. Sorry, Jeff.
And but yeah, he was, and he told me at the football game, he goes, "I'm the leader going into next week. Who should I pick?" And then he started telling me who he already took, and that's how he got to the front, is he burned a lot of drivers for 3 races already.
Yeah.
So, but
Jeff was sitting 5th after last weekend's results, and now he's up into the top 5. And Terry Havenridge was in 14th, now he's up into 7th.
So Jeff went from 1st to 5th.
I got to imagine a lot of that shakeup was probably people picking Harvick. I mean, Harvick was like the 3rd or 4th most popular driver picked for the season-long contest at New Hampshire, and because of his 2 points, really hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, Jeff was taking Ryan Blaney, I know, and still got a top 10. But with as tight as things are now, 1st to 10th isn't, or 1st to 5th isn't that big of a deal. I mean,
right.
What's the points difference? 5 or 6 points?
Yeah, it's not much. I mean, it's right there. I think Jeff has a 6-point lead over second place, but then it's real tight from there on.
Oh, so he's still in first place then?
Yeah, Husker 18, right? That's his.
Well, I'm not sure what his login is. That's why I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll have to look into that because I only take a screenshot of the standings and I don't translate their names.
But I know he told me after Chicago he was in first place. I'm like, well, good for you.
Oh well, if that's the case, then no, he fell.
Okay.
So Husker 18's in the lead. Husker fan was the leader after Chicagoland, and it fell a couple of spots after New Hampshire.
So, and it was a Husker football game we were at. Just so everybody knows, he's not BS and he is a Husker fan.
I'm sorry.
Hey, they won. I'm 2-0 this year.
They did.
I'm 2-0.
Congratulations. I'm not even going to give you grief about it because I know better than to try to trash talk with my Hawkeyes.
We got a new AD.
They'll cough it up.
We got a new AD. Well, they had an interesting game. I wish I got to watch it last week. I heard a lot about it and heard it was real exciting to watch, and somehow they blew it. But
So with the 4 guys, actually about the 6 guys that are on the bubble, Dirk, can you kind of remember who I talked about, or I could pull it up here for us? Who are the guys you think are going to get eliminated today?
I believe Casey Kane goes home. I believe Austin Dillon goes home because I think he will try too hard, and instead of just letting the race come to him and kind of just trying to ride it out and maybe race the last segment. But when you're racing for points, some of these guys can't do that anymore. They can't just ride around and wait until the end. So
Austin Dillon's even tied with Ricky Stenhouse, but Stenhouse has the tiebreaker.
Stenhouse has had some good runs at this place too. So Stenhouse can pull out a top 10, and if he can qualify good and stay up there all day, and he's done it before there. He's never won there, but he's had some good runs there. He could possibly move his way on, but he's one of them I also look.
So you've got Kane and Dillon. Who's your other 2?
Right now, I have a hard time seeing Kurt Busch moving on.
I agree with that.
Without the win.
Yep.
I don't think Casey can win here, but I think Kurt could, but I don't see it happening. So I see him disappearing.
So that's your 3.
And who was the 4th one that was back there?
Ryan Newman, 1 point back.
He's experienced enough and got the savvy. If they can have a decent car and qualify, I think he can run up front and keep it there and maybe knock Stenhouse out.
He's one of the toughest guys to pass.
Right. Well,
so I think he's going to play. He's going to have that advantage at Dover, which is a tough track to pass at, anyways.
Who was it? Kyle Larson learned that a couple years ago at Phoenix.
Yeah,
He was tough to pass.
So before you had Stenhouse in, you think maybe because Ryan Newman's your other guy,
whichever one of those guys qualifies good.
Well, you got to get. I know. Going into we're recording a couple days. I'll
say Stenhouse makes it. This is kind of his year.
The 4 that are on the bubble right now, you think are going to get eliminated: Dillon, Newman, Kurt Busch, and Kane.
Correct.
I think I agree with that. I see Stenhouse moving on, although that could be an either or. I can't decide. I mean, Austin Dillon, he shows sparks of being a very smart driver, but because of his age and he's a bit of a hothead. I think that a lot of times he lets his emotions get in the way.
Well, and for what I've noticed, I don't think he's got a lot of patience. I mean, he won at Charlotte on a fuel mileage race, but I think that was probably the hardest race he ever had to run in his life, was not to be able to step on the gas.
Probably.
Well, and I mean, you've heard other drivers say how hard that is to do, but for him especially. So
basically, I mean, Jamie McMurray is going to have to be involved in an accident. He's got a 9-point lead over the cut line. Stenhouse and Dillon are tied. Newman, Busch, and Kane are all behind. Newman 1 point, Busch 17. I don't see Jamie McMurray having an issue today at Dover. So I would say Newman's moving on with Stenhouse being eliminated.
Well, like I said, whichever one of those 2 qualifies the best is probably going to have the shot to move on.
So that's going to be our only difference. We agree that Dillon, Busch, and Kane are all 3 being eliminated. You say Newman gets eliminated. I say Stenhouse gets eliminated.
And Jamie Mack he's gonna kind of play the safe zone. I mean, he's been qualifying
and he's
real
smart
good
too. He's such a smart driver.
So he's been qualifying in the top 10. He's going to get up there, and all he's going to do is stay ahead of this guy. Where's this guy at? Where's this guy at? And it'll be neat on NBC this week. Wherever they show this guy's in now, this guy's out. That last stage. I don't even know if I'll watch the first half of the race.
If it's been my weekends recently, I mostly sleep on Sundays. I've been so exhausted and just trying to get caught up from the dirt track season and this weekend I've got my nieces and nephews, so I don't get to sleep. I'm going to be making breakfast and then we're going to be decorating the house, but they'll be gone before the race starts. So
it's Halloweeny time, huh?
It is. The best time of the year.
How do your cats do with all the kids when they come over?
Well, you know how friendly Stu can be. He's a really friendly cat, but he's very shy. And Danica's just really skittish. Sarah's cat Tonks is perfectly fine. She comes and
she'll just go out and crawl into your truck and watch you decorate.
All right, that'll do it for this weekend. Don't forget to get your picks in on time. Green flag waves a little after 1 o'clock, so all picks are due at 1 o'clock.
Usual suspects will be up front.
Absolutely. It's going to be an easy one. These first 3 races are kind of easy. You just got to pick one of the top 10 points getters, and you're probably going to get a good finish.
You should have just had a one-race contest, and the first guy that picked a driver got to pick him and only had like a 35-person contest for Talladega.
We can.
We
could do that.
It's the last week of the contest, and there's everything is going to change so much. Mm-hmm. These people right now that are tied, 3 people tied for first, they could be still tied for first going to Talladega, and then whammy.
Yep.
How'd you finish 18th? I thought you were first.
Yeah. Next weekend's show, we're going to get Stan Caesar in here. Hopefully, we're going to get Stan Caesar in here to recap the Eagle Raceway point standings. We'll probably also talk the Sprint Series in Nebraska point standings, how those championships laid out. We'll recap today's race at Dover, and we'll preview next weekend's race at Charlotte, plus so much more. For Dirk Houston, I'm Dan Taylor. This has been The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Need a reason to be at Kansas Speedway's first playoff elimination race? Here's some. Reason number 4, last year's winner, Kevin Harvick. You better believe he's ready to burn it down again this year. Reason number 18, Kyle Busch. Love him or hate him, love him and hate him, but don't ever underestimate him. The Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Hollywood Casino 400, Sunday, October 22nd. Tickets at kansasspeedway.com.
The official watering hole of The Front Stretch has you covered any day of the week with the best wings, great burgers, and amazing steaks. Each weekday from 4 to 6 is happy hour, featuring $1 off draft and well drinks plus $4 Luberitas. Mondays are kids' night. Tuesdays are all-you-can-eat wings for $12.95, and the lube even delivers to the Council Bluffs area. Like Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs on Facebook for a full list of weekly events.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Mid-America Drive, Council Bluffs.
Any driver will tell you that the key to winning a race is preventive maintenance. Pat at Eccles Heating and Air can make sure your wallet is on the winning side with a preventive care package. Pat will look over your existing unit and make recommendations to make sure you're toasty warm this winter. Drivers trust Pat at the racetrack with their safety, so you know you can trust him with your home heating. Call Pat today at 402-331-1755 and schedule your heater checkup. Eccles Heating and Air.
This has been the Front Stretch Radio Show, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. To contact Dan or Dirk, find them on Facebook at The Front Stretch or email them at frontstretch590@gmail.com. If you missed any part of today's show or want to hear a previous show, subscribe to the Joe's Karting YouTube page, where you can find almost every Front Stretch show.